inside your head and spirit. The soul is saying something profound, so let them hear it.
Welcome to Giant-Sized Violence, an Ultra Mega podcast. I'm your host, Tommy, and today we're shifting our focus away from our usual book and instead going to be taking a look at the next upcoming tokusatsu-inspired comic from Image, Dead Lucky. Taking place in the Massiverse alongside other books like Radiant Black and Rogue Sun, Dead Lucky focuses on a Latina Chinese pansexual war veteran using superpowers and a giant robot to fight tech bros and criminals in a dystopian San Francisco. If that doesn't sound like exactly the type of thing I make this podcast for, I don't know what is. Joining me today is a guest I'm incredibly excited about. They've been behind the scenes bringing us Toku and Henshin Hero content for the last 10 years. She's helped bring a long-running staple of the magical girl genre to the States with her work on Glitter Force for Netflix. And most of all, her work as a producer on Power Rangers took the franchise in exciting new directions, from actually good comic books and video games, to their return to the big screen, to even live-streamed interactive tabletop RPGs. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the show to the creator of Dead Lucky herself, Melissa Flores.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. And wow, nobody has mentioned Glitter Force ever. I'm shocked.
I do my research, and to be honest, I thought it was awesome to be able to get someone from the Power Rangers team that had experience with Saban bringing yet another long-running Japanese franchise to the States for what I can tell the first time in over a decade. So definitely something I was curious to hear about your experience on.
Oh, well, I love Glitter Force, so I'm excited that you did.
Yeah, no problem at all. And just for the newcomers in the audience, would you mind just giving us a quick blurb or telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Obviously, my name is Melissa Flores. I was a producer for a very long time with Power Rangers, and now I am a writer. So during my time with Power Rangers, I worked on Digimon, Power Rangers, Glitter Force, Julius Jr., a bunch of different projects, but always as a producer. And I was excited when I was done with Power Rangers to kind of write for myself. And so that is what I've been doing. So I've been able to do some really fun stuff like the Unleashed, which was a Twitch series with my friend Megan Camarena, and now the Dead Lucky.
But honestly, I've been diving into a lot of the projects I hadn't previously heard about before looking more into the Dead Lucky, and I've got to say, there's not much out there like a lot of the content I've seen you put out. The Unleashed specifically, with being a somewhat interactive live-streamed RPG like Power Rangers Hyperforce, but with incorporating comic elements and live-action recorded bits. I really think it's one of a kind from what I found so far. So, mind if I ask how you found yourself more or less pioneering or helping pioneer this new type of streaming and gaming experience?
Yeah, well, I had worked on a show called Power Rangers Hyperforce with Hyper RPG. It's an amazing Twitch channel, and what they do is they provide a lot of live content for Twitch, and part of that is these RPGs that they run. And what was really interesting about Power Rangers Hyperforce, it was the first time that we had done something that was semi-scripted. So we knew more or less what the general plot was going to be. And then the middle of it, or how we got to A, B, and C, that was all improvised. And it was up to the players and the DM. And it was a really interesting hybrid and a really interesting mix. But because we were under the brand constraints that we weren't able to do everything we really wanted to do. And so when I left Power Rangers, Megan, who is Strawberry17, is a Twitch influencer, a streamer. Her and her friends, Mika Midget and Shelby Grace, they really wanted to do a show of their own. And they wanted a superhero show. And so Megan called me and asked me if I would help them create a show and write it for them. So we put together a show. We created a world and we created characters for each one of these girls. We added 2 new cast members. We added Mike Bowe, who was an incredible actor. He's been on Kung Fu. He's been on a bunch of really cool YouTube videos, really talented guy. And also we cast Christopher Sean as our villain named Dante. And Christopher, I had met recently at an event and I had always wanted to work with him, and he is incredible. He is the new Nightwing in the Gotham Knights video game. And he's done You. He has done, I think he's doing Days of Our Lives right now. So he's a very talented actor, incredible. And so we put them all together, and then we got Abria Iyengar, who is, I think now with Critical Role and a bunch of other shows, to DM it. So Abria and I would tag team each other. I would write the general idea, and then we'd work together on whether or not that would work, and then she would DM the the actual episodes. And we would also create these filmed segments as well. So we had scripted segments that were written and filmed that would be shown through the live recording. And then the rest of the time we would play out these scenarios as a semi-scripted RPG. So there was a lot of balls in the air. It was a very challenging piece of work, but you're right. I don't think there was anything like that. And I think the audience really responded to it in a really cool and fun way. And I still love that Unleashed. I want to go back and do more with it. It's just been a matter of time and getting everybody together because we're all so busy now. But it was great. I loved it.
Yeah, and with Power Rangers Hyperforce, I remember being incredibly surprised seeing that this live play RPG was actually becoming canon with the characters appearing in the comic books and such.
Oh yeah, well that was always meant to be the case. We really wanted to work hard on, when I was with Power Rangers, on the idea of a multiverse. On the idea that there are different things to what canon means, right? I think what was difficult sometimes for fans to get their head around is that Power Rangers has lived for so long, right? You have so many different iterations of Power Rangers. And I think the assumption was always by the fans that that every single one of them lived in the same universe. And then Power Rangers Dino Charge happened and people got very upset because that broke canon to an extent. And so what we wanted to do was kind of set up this narrative that like you can have more than one true canon timeline, right? You have the Boom Power Rangers storylines, which we treat as canon, but also can't be completely canon because these are Power Rangers, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. They obviously don't live in the 90s. They're modern day Rangers, but it's the same timeline. And then you have Power Ranger Hyperforce, which is meant to, it's canon itself, and it treats so the way I always explained it, which may be confusing, Power Rangers Hyperforce, the TV show is canon to Power Rangers Hyperforce and it exists in that universe, but that doesn't mean that the Power Rangers Hyperforce is canon to the TV show, if that makes sense. So we treat everything that happens in the TV show and the books in Power Rangers Hyperforce as absolute canon. Power Rangers Hyperforce is a legitimate Power Rangers team. They have their own suits. They have their own Zords. They're just told in a different medium. And that was always the intention. We really wanted to take it seriously and really create something cool and fun with that series when it came to a Power Rangers 25th anniversary. God, it's been 5 years. Oh my God.
Wow. Yeah, and I feel like that's going to be just a big source of inspiration now that we have a proper released Power Rangers RPG. I mean, I've been involved in a couple campaigns myself, and I can already see the community taking off, trying to do these huge projects, interacting with GMs across the country, people getting art of the Rangers made that frankly look incredible or almost up to show standards in many cases. So yeah, I remember being very disappointed at the time that I couldn't find the system Hyperforce was using, but yeah, glad to have something now.
I mean, there was a lot of things that we wanted to do with Power Rangers Hyperforce, and unfortunately, I just think we just ran out of time. The intention was always to make a second season. The intention was always to release the rules in some way or another. That's why we had Malika on board, because she was a game designer. But unfortunately, we just ran out of time. That was a Saban Brands production, and Hasbro bought the brand. And so it was absolutely, it was their prerogative. They had their own priorities when it came to Power Rangers, and Hyperforce, unfortunately, just didn't feel like it was one of them. So maybe they could always bring it back. It's there and it's ready for them to use, and I'd be excited if they did. And now that we have an RPG, which is cool, even if it's not Hyperforce.
Now, I've seen your position listed as the Director of Production and Development for Power Rangers in your tenure on the show. Could you tell us a little bit about what that actually means for those of us outside of Hollywood?
I mean, it means anything and everything, honestly. In itself, originally I started as just a regular current development executive. That was always going to be my job. But as the job evolved, it more became brand expert / lore master / storyteller. So all that really means is that, yes, I would sometimes help with the television show. I would help with the day-to-day, not really creatively. I was able to contribute a little bit on Beast Morphers, but I helped develop the feature film. Anything that there was a story involved, or my team, anybody on my team, whether it be my boss, Brian, or Paul, who was also on the team, would work with business affairs and the licensing team to make sure that story, whether it be in video games, publishing, movies, TV, digital, whatever, was the best possible Power Ranger story as it could be, and that it was true to the lore as it needed to be. And my focus was not so much the kid stuff, but more the stuff that was more I don't want to say adult focused, but more older. So things like the Power Rangers comic books, the video game Power Rangers Legacy Wars, and then Battle for the Grid, short digital films we did like Street Fighter Showdown or the Shattered Grid promo film that Kyle directed. And so it was that kind of stuff that I would mainly focus on. And then I would also, as like the self-appointed, I guess, brand expert, I would also give notes on, this suit looks wrong, or this is missing a stripe, or this needs to be a diamond instead of a triangle, that sort of thing. So really, it could change any day. Like sometimes when I was a coordinator and a manager, I would still be out with the Rangers that were doing appearances, and I would help with that. I mean, when I first started, I was in the warehouse trying to figure out what all the costumes were and putting them all together and trying to create complete sets. So it really was whatever the job needed to be, that's what I did.
You sound like the show's parent to some extent here. Just
oh, God, I hope
tailoring
not.
everyone's costumes and overseeing everything. That's really incredible. And I have to say, I'm incredibly grateful for the work that you put into Power Rangers, and that, like, the Boom Studios comics especially was the first time I felt like there was any Power Rangers media that I could actually get behind and share with other people that weren't fans as kids. Like, it was nice to finally get something that I as an adult fan could enjoy that wasn't completely being carried by nostalgia.
Oh yeah, and I mean that getting that license and putting that together, I had nothing to do with that. Obviously, that was our amazing licensing team and our incredible business affairs person, Jason. And also a lot of credit goes to Boom for having the insight and foresight to say we want to do an older version of this. We don't want to do a kid's comic book. We want to do something cool for these older fans. And to Kyle, who had the vision and direction to write Power Rangers in such a way that it really focused on character and still kept true to what the brand could be, but made it deeper and more interesting and not more interesting, but interesting for somebody older, maybe more nuanced, creating these real world stakes in Power Rangers where when you're used to a television series where everything's resolved in 22 minutes and kids have to learn a lesson by the end of it. It's not the same kind of story that you're telling. And so major kudos to everybody involved. They did an amazing job. And I was just one tiny piece of that big cog. But it was one of my favorite things that I did there. It was such a joy to work with the Boom editorial team and with the writers and with the team at Saban Brands. And then at Hasbro on that book. They were so good. And they still are. They are incredibly done. And the writers, Kyle Higgins, Marguerite Bennett, Ryan Parrott, Matt Groom, I think Anthony Birch, they were all incredible, every single one of them, and really great talent that really takes Power Rangers in incredibly new and different directions every time. And it's really fun to watch.
Now, I see you usually most directly credited with the season of Power Rangers Beast Morphers. I am curious how your role on that show compared to the rest of your time on Power Rangers.
So it was that kind of credit that I had been with Power Rangers for a long time. I had worked on the show for a long time. But as I was working my way up, I was a coordinator, then a manager, then a director, then a Power Rangers director. It was one of those things where I worked on everything else, and then the show was kind of out of my hands. That wasn't something I worked on nothing creatively. I would work on day to day. I would work with the casting people. I would work with the costume people and that sort of thing to get things done. But I never really had the opportunity to contribute creatively. Until Beast Morphers, I was finally allowed to give notes and to be a bigger part of that production. And that's what that entailed, being allowed to be a true co-producer on that show, which was great. And I was very happy and blessed to be able to do that for sure.
I mean, honestly, your knowledge and experience with the brand really shows. While I'll confess I haven't watched through all of Beast Morphers myself, I am in the fandom quite a bit, and I widely see it considered as the best season of recent years, or the best anniversary season that happens to not be on an anniversary year. So, it seems like all that time kind of curating the brand really paid off.
Yeah, and again, Beast Morphers, credit to the amazing team in New Zealand who put their heart and soul into it. We absolutely did what we could to help and worked with them, but I mean, that was very much, the TV show was very much New Zealand's baby. We work with them on what we can, but they definitely carry the football. So that was always fun.
Bringing us back to Glitter Force, I am genuinely curious how the experience compares working in so many different roles on Power Rangers and working with like Saban's go-to brand to being part of yet another long-standing Japanese transforming hero franchise that Saban was bringing to the States in a new way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest, it's weird to talk about Glitter Force because I know a lot of people hate it just on principle. But I really love it and I'm very proud of it. At the time, I wasn't just a Power Rangers producer and or Power Rangers executive. My job was just the manager and director of development and production. So though Power Rangers was a big part of my job was also to develop and create other content. And Glitter Force was one of the shows that I was the EIC on, which is the executive in charge. So it was my job to put this show together and deliver it to the network, which was Netflix. So it was done honestly, it kind of followed the same formula as Power Rangers in that we had footage. We had to interpret the footage in a way that would make sense for an American kid audience, which was very important, which is not looked at favorably, I think, by a lot of the older audience, justifiably, because they love Pretty Cure as is in its purest form, and they wanted Pretty Cure to come as Pretty Cure to the States. And I came in and was like, nope, it's Glitter Force, and they did not like that at all, and I get it. But the point was always to do this for a young audience. And so with that in mind, it was always taking a look at the footage and seeing how we could put together the best possible story for a young audience that also fit broadcasting standards, that also was easy to follow from a younger perspective. And so essentially it was the same thing as Power Rangers. Power Rangers takes a look at the Sentai footage, repurposes it, and creates a new story that works for an American audience. They rename everything. They recast the faces, and it becomes its own product. And that's essentially what we did with Pretty Cure. We tested Pretty Cure, actually, the name, and it just did not test well with a young
Glitter
audience.
Force is way better. Good job on that.
I mean, people were very upset. I noticed online people were very upset that we changed the name, and I get it, but they just thought it was a show about hot nurses. Like, they did not like it. Glitter Force was tested by far much better, and it could be a very dark show. And so we had to be very careful because in general, Japanese content for children is a lot darker and more violent than a lot of kids' content here is. So we had to be very careful with what we were allowed to show. And I think honestly, I'm really proud of Glitter Force. I think it was a lot of fun. We did new dance moves. We had a very limited budget to do these new dance videos, but we did them. We had new songs. We had a band create a new theme song. It was just a lot of fun. And I think for me, the most validating thing ever was when I saw how little girls responded to it. Like, they absolutely loved it. And we had an amazing cast, an amazing voice director. Laura Bailey, who literally records everything ever for everyone now, was our lead. She was amazing. Debbie Derryberry, I can't believe I mushed her name so bad. She's amazing. She was on it. We had an incredible cast that is still doing incredible things, and we were lucky to have them. It was just a really fun show, and thankfully Netflix was very happy with it. So I was happy to be on that show. I was happy with what I did. Definitely understand why some people wouldn't like the choices we made, especially an older audience. But definitely we did not do those changes lightly. And definitely a lot of those are up to interpretation, and people may not agree with me. But at the end of the day, I stand by my choices. I love that little show. It's so cute. And I was so glad I got to do it. I did the first season, and then I started the second season, which is Glitter Force Doki Doki. And then I ended up just getting too busy. I just had too much going on with Power Rangers. And so I ended up being transferred to just Power Rangers. So I became the Power Rangers development and production person. And Glitter Force went to somebody named Nathan, who was amazing. And he is now the VP of animation at Nickelodeon. So it was obviously in good hands. So it was great.
I gotta say, I checked out a little bit of Glitter Force, and while I was well outside the target audience, that music was actually the one standout to me, since we don't really see in American anime anymore the original opening and ending credits, and I mean, growing up on Digimon's amazing soundtrack here, that's something I genuinely miss. I know I'm in the minority in that opinion, but yeah, I can fully stand behind that decision.
It was so cute to watch videos of little girls dancing and singing along with the music, which was the entire intention. We hired a choreographer to put together these intentionally easy to follow dance moves, and then had not as good as the CGI as you would see in the original recordings, but still decent enough CGI for a little girl could watch it and follow it and pretend that they were these characters. And I loved it. The songs were so catchy and fun, and I am really very proud of it. Thank you for asking about Glitter Force, because I freaking love it. and I always will. Sometimes I'll just watch an episode because I get such a kick out of it. We had so much fun with the ad lib and improv. I remember a lot of these voice actors that we have in there were all anime dub actors, and very good ones, incredibly good ones. Like Colleen O'Shaughnessy, I think that's how you say her name, and Danielle, and a bunch of different amazing actors. And they're so used to being so faithful to the script, justifiably so, right? Where you're just doing a straight transfer of the script when you do a dub for an older anime. And instead, me and Mary Elizabeth, the voice director, were like, no, have fun with it. This is for kids. Let's make it feel contemporary and fun. And so I remember, like, even Keith Silverstein, who played 3 villains, we would just be able to have fun in the voice recording booth, and it ended up to be such a funny show because they found these moments to add humor that didn't exist in the original animation. I remember there was one point where in the episode where Lily, played by Alex Cazares, is struggling to come out of her shell, and 2 of the other characters were trying to get her to go for something, I think an art contest or something. And it's this really like sweet melodramatic moment. And they're like, look at yourself. What does your heart tell you? And I remember like in my head immediately, I'm like, she should just say I should quit. And instead of, because what you expect is her to like, oh, my heart says I should go. And so we're like, just say I should quit. And she did. And it is the funniest thing because then we could add like a record scratch in there. And it's just such a cute moment because you have this like saturn moment. She's like, listen to your heart. What does it tell you? She's like, I should quit. Like, no, that's not what I meant. It's really cute. And so those were those moments that I really had fun with Glitter Force. It was just a blast, and best cast, best people to work with. And I was very lucky to have them. The producers that helped work on it with me, who did the dubs and the animations, worked so hard. And it was great. I had fun.
Now, I've always thought that Saban has been sitting on a gold mine of properties based on some of their 90s adaptations. So I'm really curious, either things Saban did or well outside of that, if there's any other one Japanese franchise that you'd like to bring to America in a big way, what would it be for you?
I mean, it's hard now. It's not, we don't live in the age where our world is so much closer. We don't live in an age where that's something that necessarily is possible anymore. I think the last time it was really tried was Yokai Watch, and I don't think that was super successful. I think for me, it's hard. They're all here. They're all here already. Like, what is missing? Ultraman and Kamen Rider? I mean, those have been tried already, and I'm really curious to see what they'll try and do again with those 2 brands. But Godzilla and all the animes that are just doing gangbusters, I mean, they're already here. Our audience is a lot more savvy when it comes to we're not as ethnocentric as we used to be, and we love a good anime. So it's hard to say something needs to come. I think people are already looking, and I'm honestly really excited by that. I think that's really cool.
Personally, I'm holding my breath for a Beetleborgs reboot someday, but I can certainly see what you mean in that I lived through the dark ages of needing to go to the borderline dark web to find episodes of Kamen Rider, and now I can stream them for free on a couple different streaming services. So yeah, I certainly see what you mean there. Yeah,
exactly. And also just, it's where, and this is going to sound controversial, we are one of the few countries that is still having a hard time understanding genre. And I think one of the hardest things for maybe an uninformed fan, like somebody who's not like specifically a Toku fan, and we ran into this a little bit with Glitter Force, is that a lot of the general audience doesn't understand there's a magical girl genre, right? So everybody was just like, well, they're just ripping off Sailor Moon. This is just a Sailor Moon ripoff. And trying to explain like, no, it isn't. It's its own show. This is just a show in a genre called Magical Girl can be difficult. And I think that's why Kamen Rider and Ultraman have had trouble in adapting in the US when it comes to doing a Power Ranger-y kind of show. Additionally, to do a live action show like Power Rangers is incredibly expensive. And so I think Power Rangers works the way it does because it's worked that way for 25 years. But I'm going to be honest, I don't think it's going to work that way much longer. And now I think with CGI catching up to the real world, I think we're probably going to see more CGI things. There's not going to be a need to like repurpose footage and create a show around it the formula that Power Rangers does.
Now, on that note of understanding genre, as someone who's worked with Henshin heroes and tokusatsu for quite a while, I am really curious about how that'll be seen in Dead Lucky. So leaning into some of these tropes, is there anything from tokusatsu that you're hoping to lean into, or anything that you're going to be making a conscious effort to be straying away from?
Absolutely. I come from Power Rangers. That's in my DNA. I have a Power Rangers tattoo. It means a lot to me, and I love the series and the show, and I want to honor it. Every single one of our writers that's currently in the Massiverse, Kyle, Ryan, Matt, except for Cherish, has worked on Power Rangers in some capacity. So I think we all have, and I think we all have affinity for Toku. I think even Kyle and Matt are doing Ultraman now. So there is always going to be some kind of Toku roots. For Dead Lucky especially, I really want to lean into the mech aspects of Toku. I love a good robot. Zords are my favorite thing in the world. And one of the things that you're going to see in Dead Lucky a lot is that it is the robot book. We will be having robots upon robots upon robots, because that is something I really love. And even Bibi's suit itself was Toku-inspired. We purposely made sure that the silhouette felt very Toku. The helmet felt very Toku. We added our own American spin, American colors, or actually Mexican spin. The helmet is based on a Mexican calavera, but I wanted a suit that was Toku-inspired. I wanted somebody that was in a mech driving it around like a Zord. And I think that's what you'll see. In terms of the other Toku aspects, I love the idea of monster fighting. I don't know if there's room for monsters in Dead Lucky. It's a very tech-centered book, so you'll see monsters in other forms. But otherwise, I mean, honestly, it really just depends on the book itself and the road it takes, I think. I love Toku, and I'm never going to say that I'm trying to shy away from it. But definitely The Dead Lucky is its own book that I would say is not necessarily a Toku story, but is Toku-inspired, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. And this being the robot book, I'm not going to ask you to spoil anything, but what are the odds that within the next 20 issues, should the book run that long, that we'll see the robot ghost combine with 5 other robots to form one bigger robot?
I mean, I don't want to spoil the book or anything, but it is a robot book, and I do come from Power Rangers, so I'd say there might be anything's possible.
Just needed to know it's not out of the question. That's awesome. And curiosity's getting the better of me. Do you mind if I ask about the Power Rangers tattoo?
Yeah, when I left Power Rangers, it felt like the ending of something for me. I had been working for that brand and working very hard for 10 years, and it was so much of my identity. And when I left it, I kind of wanted something that felt ritualistic in terms of, this is me saying goodbye in a way that respects the time that I had with it. And so I decided that that's the way I wanted to do it. I wanted a shattered grid lightning bolt tattoo that's awesome. I felt represented the time with Rangers and what I loved best. And so I just went and got a shattered grid Power Rangers tattoo, and I love it. I look at it every day.
Yeah, I'll admit the idea is getting more and more tempting to me, and going through some major changes myself right now and having Power Rangers to carry me through, I'm definitely considering a stronger than before tattoo myself.
Yeah, you should. They're fun.
Now, you've said before that your job on Power Rangers was not to create, but to produce. And you mentioned earlier the, if not stifling, just the lack of opportunity to put forward your creative ideas onto the show. So is there anything in Dead Lucky that you would say is derived at all from some of your unused ideas from Power Rangers?
No, this is a completely new story. I think because of the work I did with Power Rangers, so much of what I did was project-based, which means when you're done with something, you're done with it. You move forward and you pick something else up. And that's kind of how I work now, even. I'm very project-based, so I don't tend to use ideas for other projects. I keep them for the projects that they're meant for. So Dead Lucky, everything for Dead Lucky is for Dead Lucky specifically. The story, the characters, everything that is a part of it is all specifically tailored for that specific story.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as getting tailored specifically to things, I've just noticed that Bibi seems to be an exploration of very real-world issues in a very one-of-a-kind character in several ways. I mean, from her mixed-race background to her sexuality or even her experience as a veteran. Could you tell us a bit about what inspired these decisions for Bibi and what you're hoping to explore with her?
Yeah, I mean, I very much wanted Bibi to be a person that is stuck between worlds and very unsure of her identity at this moment. She is a Army veteran who has lost her entire platoon, and she is essentially the lone survivor of that and has had an incredibly traumatic experience that has somehow left her with these superpowers that she doesn't quite know what to do with. And she has been forced to come home to San Francisco, and the home that she grew up in no longer exists. So I wanted to play with her sense of self here. And it was important to me that she be biracial and pansexual, not because she doesn't know who she is because of these things, but because both things come with them. I don't want to say a lack of identity, but people tend to not be quite sure where you stand when you are either of those things. And not everybody. There's some people that are amazing, but bias does exist. And for Bibi, she's stuck trying to figure things out. She's not a soldier anymore, but she can't ever be a civilian again. Lives in Chinatown, but she's in San Francisco. So it's a very much of old culture versus new tech. She's Catholic, but she's also very science-based. So much of it is just her being stuck and trying to figure herself out. And representation is incredibly important to me. So I wanted to make sure she was Latin, but also I wanted to make her biracial. And I'm very familiar with the Chinese culture because my girlfriend is Chinese, and this character is heavily inspired by not just her experiences, but the experience of other veterans. So I wanted to honor her culture as well as a Chinese person. So she's biracial. And then I'm queer. And I wanted Bibi to be queer because, again, that representation is important to me. And so, but Bibi herself is pansexual, and because that made sense for that character. She's her own character. She has her own experiences, and it made sense for Bibi to be pansexual because she is open to everything. She does not fall in love easily, but when she does, it's pretty hard and fast. And so you'll see a little bit smattering of romance with Bibi, and it's going to be complicated on every end for her. So it's going to be fun to explore that.
Yeah, I'm honestly excited to see that explored in the book. I mean, I'm used to the years of queer issues not being tackled the most delicately in comic books, so it was kind of refreshing to see this character that I know from prior context as pansexual, but she never has the looking at the camera and saying, "I'm pansexual" moment. So I'm real excited to see how we see that play out over the next few issues.
Yeah, she's not going to be one of those people that I would never want it to be a thing where this becomes her entire identity, right? I'm Latina, I'm female, I'm queer. Those are all things that are a part of who I am, but they don't define who I am. I am also defined by every one of those things. Like, every one of those things makes me the person that I am. But when I want people to look at me, I want them to look at me, not these other things, right? So that's kind of how I write Bibi. She is all these things, but not one of those truly defines her, and she doesn't see it as anything that has to be defined. If she defines herself, it is as a soldier. That is the biggest prevailing constant in her life, and who she happens to be sleeping with is almost incidental to that, honestly, or even her race. But it is something that has absolutely defined her, who she is, and it is not something she is ever going to, I think, specifically going to call out unless she's directly has a conversation with a character about it. But we're not hiding it either, right? Because it's important that these people just exist as they are. And especially in San Francisco, I really want San Francisco to feel like the world that I live in Los Angeles, and the way I know San Francisco exists. So you're going to see non-binary people, you're going to see trans people, you're going to see people of very different races and different sizes, because that is the world that exists around us in this city. And it's important to me to feature that in the book. But again, it is just going to be people that exist. It's not meant to push any sort of narrative or view other than beyond that. People just exist, are living their lives, they have jobs, and they exist around Bibi, and sometimes they're important to the plot and sometimes they're not, but that doesn't matter, right? The point is that they live in this city and they're living their lives, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, I totally understand that, and I'm very much looking forward to meeting this diverse supporting cast of characters beyond who's just in the first issue. Now, having talked quite a bit about Bibi and Ghost now, would you be able to share a little bit about the actual world or city that this book is taking place in, as well as these tech bro villains that Bibi's coming up against?
Yeah, so they purposely put this world in San Francisco. San Francisco is going to be not the San Francisco we know, but more as San Francisco as it would exist maybe 5-10 years from now, but that exists now in the Massiveverse. So what has happened is that Morrow, which is, think of like Google meets Blackwater, has come to the government, essentially said, we love San Francisco. It's going to crap. The crime is up. Everything is like, you can't do anything to save the city, but we can. we will take the city under our wing. Let us take it over. Let us create a test city, the city of tomorrow, and we will put billions into this and do everything that you can't do. Free healthcare, free security, everything that the people need. We will turn this city into a utopia of technology, and all you have to do is just let us do it. And the government was like, okay. And so they have come in and created a San Francisco that is very tech forward and meant to truly showcase what a tech-based city could be. The downside to that is that in doing everything they feel to elevate what makes San Francisco great, they are pushing away everything they feel makes San Francisco bad. And that means gentrification, that means relocating people, that means pushing out homeless people who don't have anywhere to live and making other people homeless by pushing them out. And it is causing quite a division in the city because there's also lack of privacy concerns and a police state. And so it is a weird kind of simmering situation where you have this corporation who swears they're doing good and might very well have pure intentions, though who knows, but they're doing it not great in a way that is not conducive to the normal citizen of San Francisco, because they don't want the normal people. They want the best people. So there is another gang called the Salvation Gang who has risen up against them and has managed to hold on to Castro, but that's it. The great thing about San Francisco is that it's really divided into these districts with a lot of flavor and personality, each one. And so I've been able to really play with that in the book. And so they are the opposition, but they're so violent that they're not doing these citizens any favors either. And so the citizens, just the people trying to live their lives in San Francisco, are kind of caught in the middle of this power struggle. And that's the world that Bibi walks into, where she doesn't pick a side either way, but her side is the sides of the innocent civilians. She's just trying to be there for them. And so whether she's fighting Moro or Salvation Gang, she doesn't care. She just wants them out of Chinatown specifically because that's her district where her family lives.
As someone who works in computer science myself, I am continuously finding out more and more how every major tech company, whether it be every single gig economy app, is destroying whatever part of the economy they're taking over and not even making a profit, or social media companies profiting off, sometimes intentionally making the world worse. I'm curious if there's any specific, I don't want to make you name companies here, but if there's anything specific within the realm of, tech bros that you're really going to be drawing a lot of influence from beyond just, like Google.
I mean, pick your poison, honestly, these days, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of this stuff, we purposely created these bots to be based on technology as it exists now. It's not anything that is so incredibly outlandish that can't be done with, Blackwater or Boston Dynamics or even freaking Amazon with their drones, right? It could be, like I said, pick your poison. Pharmaceutical companies, any corporation that exists to make a lot of money can have the best of intentions. And if you're still existing for incredible profit every year, it's unsustainable. And so shortcuts and bad decisions have to be made. And I'm not against capitalism. I'm very much a capitalist, but I believe in ethical capitalism, I think. And when these companies are beholden to stockholders and the only thing they care about is increasing profit every year with no real attention paid to real world surroundings and the market itself, then you end up in these kind of terrible situations where the inflation gets really high, or you see CEOs getting incredible bonuses while nobody else is getting raises, or paying $20 a pound for hay when you're used to paying $2. So it's not based on any one company, and I'm not out for any one company, but I think Moro is just an example of what could be. Right? The worst of the worst. The road to hell is paved with the best intentions, right? This could be Microsoft. This could be Apple. This could be Google. This could be Amazon. It could be anybody that just cared about profits and cared about their mission more than their employees and the people they're trying to supposedly help.
Now, you've talked about how the tech in this world is meant to be based on things that exist in the real world now, but just haven't maybe been quite implemented yet. Feel free to have me cut this question based on where it's going. But looking at the Morrow security bots, I believe they're what the kids would call thick. Is that an intentional design choice? Like maybe with Morrow trying to make the bot sexy, or him having a little bit of an ex machina side to himself? Or
No, but I learned a lot about you. No, I'm kidding. No, it was, we're trying to make the robots sexy, I think. We're trying to make them functional. And one of the things I really want to play with Morrow is the idea, they're obsessed with the idea of cybernetics and sentience. And they want to create artificial life, but they want to make it real. Because if you're able to do that, then you can live forever. And these robots, I purposely wanted to make them feel as impersonal as possible. They're meant to look like somebody's trying really hard to make them comfy and nice, and in reality are terrifying.
I have to say you absolutely succeed on that, despite my previous comment. But
well, that was all French. The French, Carlo Magno, the artist, he did a fantastic job on these bots.
Now, as far as the robot Ghost goes, him or herself, is that also something that you intend to reveal is based on existing real-world technology, or is this something where more of the sci-fi elements are going to be slipping in?
I think out of all of them, Ghost is special because Ghost is brought to life by Bibi. So he is less real-world based for sure because he is a product of her superpowers, which is she can see and manipulate electrical currents and use that to take over these bots and bring them to life. And so she sees Ghost as a true partner, not necessarily her mech. To her, Ghost is a living thing. And you're going to see that conflict with Morrow because they cannot create sentient robots. Ghost is special in that way. And I wouldn't say Ghost is even sentient. I don't think he is. I think he feels alive to Bibi, and I think that's good enough for her. But it does get, I would say it's confusing to her as to what's real and what's not. And Ghost lives in that kind of blurry bit where he is a coping mechanism and a partner for her because she's used to having a team and now she doesn't have it anymore. And so his design is meant to be a little more friendly, a little more fun, and definitely something that is meant to just be cooler than these Morobots, if that makes sense.
On the note of Bibi's powers, we see a lot about this book and the world in just the first issue as far as Bibi's interpersonal struggles, her supporting cast, the robot, and who built it. But Bibi's powers are kind of one of those last-minute surprises in the final pages of the issue. Now, is the origin of these powers something you intend to reveal in the very near future, like in the next 2 issues, or is this something that you're planning to kind of slowly reveal over time or over the course of the series?
It's going to be a slow reveal over time. I don't think it's honestly super important that people find out how she got these powers right away. For me, the story starts when she creates Ghost, and the powers are almost incidental to that. They are absolutely something that affects her, and I do have an origin for her of how she got them. But for her, it's not even how did I become this way? It's how do I control this so I could help people with it? So it's not... For her, the more traumatic experience is not getting these powers, it's losing her team. And so you see her focus on that in the first few issues because she has come back and has still not dealt with the grief of losing her platoon. So you kind of see those kind of flashbacks where she's thinking about the people she lost more so than how she got these powers. In success of the comic, which I hope we get more than 6 issues, then yes, you're absolutely going to see how she got these powers. And that's, I think, for a different story that I want to tell. But when we're starting with these first few issues, her story is more about coming to terms with not being a soldier anymore and trying to figure out how to be a superhero when she doesn't have the support that she's used to having as an army captain.
Yeah, now I know I'm far from the only comic book fan that's kind of sick of the origin story, so that's actually very refreshing to hear.
Well, thank you. It was a gamble, and I was afraid that people wouldn't get into it, but I think hopefully there's enough trust that story will be told eventually, that it doesn't have to happen right away.
To be honest, if we never see how she gets the powers, that is frankly a better alternative than her falling into a pit of electric eels, so I'll take it.
It's definitely not what happens.
But on the note of Bibi's trauma there, through the book we see that her kind of self-narration out loud to the audience is a form of her processing her own trauma. And I mean, I've heard others agree that, yeah, talking to themselves has been a major factor in processing these things or coping. But I am curious, I've seen comic writers try several different methods to kind of get around the thought bubbles of old comics, and this is definitely a first for me, seeing the main character address the audience directly, almost in like a Malcolm in the Middle style, in a sense. So I'm curious if this was always the plan for kind of getting in Bibi's head, or if there were other ideas that were worked through as far as how we find out who everyone is and her relation to people and how Bibi is feeling.
No, this was absolutely intentional. From the first draft I wrote the script, this is what I wanted. I wanted her to make people uncomfortable in a way. And I think even in the script, I said she looks right at the camera. She looks right at the reader, and it's meant to be jarring. You're not meant to expect that. And you're meant to truly wonder why she's doing this. And what I'm hoping is by the last pages of the book, you will understand why this is a thing, and it'll make sense. But what I wanted was a way for Bibi to express herself in a way that she felt safe, that maybe she wouldn't be able to do any other way. She's not Batman, right? She's not going to be like a Noir character that's like, oh, today, like, blah, blah, blah. Like, she's not that character, right? So I think it was very easy for her to just be like, Army made me weird. I talked to myself, and have people be like, okay, it's an easy way to manipulate people into just leaving her alone. And you see that the minute she says something about the Army, a lot of people are very willing to just be like, okay, sure. You see it with the therapist to an extent. You see it with her best friend Eddie, who kind of is like, hey, the Army made you weird. And she's like, yeah, but wasn't I always? You even see it when she talks to a Moro guard who kind of says something like, oh, it's a Lieutenant Dan situation, right? So she's definitely using strategy there, but it's also a way for me to convey to the audience how she's feeling that doesn't feel like just a bunch of VO or a caption bubble that, everyone has done before.
Now, so far the Massiveverse has been really creative in its use of other media to supplement the books, from the Radiant Black short films to Ryan Parrott doing a choose your own adventure at the end of issues of Rogue Sun, and you being someone with a lot of experience with basically one-of-a-kind media. Is there anything you have in store or hope to explore with Dead Lucky as far as other media goes?
I've been a producer for a long time, and I believe strongly in synergy and being able to take stories and tell them in different ways, be it via podcast, movies, film, TV, comic books. So absolutely, I would love to be able to do that. I think for now, because this is my first ongoing series and because it's with Image, I just want to tell as good of a story in this medium as I can. And if it leads somewhere else for the book, amazing. If I just get to tell it in this book, that's good for me too. I freaking love this story and I love this series. I just want it to be as strong as it can be as a comic book. I think eventually, because I have such a great, I want to say even mentor in Kyle, and because I'm around such brilliant people like Ryan, the inspiration will absolutely strike. And just seeing what they do and how they do it is so much fun to watch. I can't say that won't happen to me too, but I think for now, I'm 4 books in terms of scripts. I'm just trying to do the best story I can, and hope people gain trust in me in that way before I start blowing up anything in terms of the medium.
Before I start bringing this episode to a close, I would just like to ask if there's anything else that you'd like to add.
No, I say thank you for the time and thank you for the interest in Dead Lucky, and just appreciate your support. I love this series. I'm super excited to bring this kind of character to a superhero universe, especially one as unique as the Massiveverse. And I hope I get to do it for more than 6 issues.
Here's hoping for a very long run. I'm definitely sold off what I've read of the first issue, and look forward to see where you take it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Melissa, for joining us today. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, and we'd love to hear from you again after the book's release. But to everyone listening at home, go out and pre-order Dead Lucky at your local comic shop by July 11th. Having read the preview myself, I can attest that you won't be disappointed. The world building and characters are amazing, and the art is just incredible. This is definitely going to be worth putting on your pull list. But if the listeners at home, if you have any requests or recommendations for content you'd like us to cover in the future, you can send them our way on social media. You can find us on the Giant Giant Sized Violence Facebook page, on Twitter as UltraMegaCast, or email us at giantsizedviolence@gmail.com. We'd like to thank you again for giving the podcast a chance, and give a special shout out to artists Ray Day Parade and Darkmoon Home Video for designing our logo and cover photos. Our intro and outro music is You're an Ace Kid by Demon Dice from their album Alcatraz. You can check out their new EP, Shut Up, Get Happy, on iTunes and Spotify. We hope you join us again as we continue to explore the movies and shows that Ultra Mega draws influence from, as well as other tokusatsu comics that are now hitting the shelves. Until then, take care and remember to do your part in preventing the spread of the kaiju virus.
Freedom can't be seen by downcast eyes. So raise your gaze until you're 10 feet tall. And shake your fist to the sky. Refuse to higher, let them make you small. Cause they love just to see you convinced you're just a brick in the wall. But you're not just a brick in the wall. La da 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 da.